John, which is a later text, and later ones we can't trust as much as the earlier one, changes it, or appears to have changed it. When does Jesus die in Mark? Or in John?
On Friday evening.
Before Passover.
Before, on the day of preparation.
Yeah. Remember that?
So there's the day of prep, and then there's actually the Passover day. Jesus dies in the Mark on the day of Passover, and in John, he dies on the day of preparation. Why would John change it to make Jesus die on the day of preparation?
Because of Pontius Pilate, because of the relation.
Uh,
It was saying that it washed his hands from actual murder, that was, or the persecution that happened on Passover.
No, that's not. No, I don't think so. It's something specifically related to the Passover. Well, let me back up. What is the Passover? What's Passover celebrate?
When Moses told all of the Hebrews to put the blood on their doors so that God would not kill their firstborn and instead kill them.
Yeah, the Passover in the Hebrew Scriptures originated with the story in Exodus. You guys have heard of Moses, right? Moses and the Israelites were enslaved by what country? Egypt. They were enslaved in Egypt. And what did God send 10 of to help them escape Egypt? 10 plagues, right? Moses goes to the Pharaoh and says, my God's going to kick your God's butt and your butt if you don't let us go. And Pharaoh says, ha ha, I dare you to try. So God sends 10 plagues, and eventually Pharaoh gives in and says, okay, I give up. You guys can go. What's the last plague? Death of the firstborn. God says to Moses, tell the Pharaoh that the next plague is coming, and what I'm going to do is kill every single one of your children that's the firstborn. So, if you guys all have firstborn sons, I'm going to kill them. They can protect themselves by slaughtering a lamb and putting the blood of the lamb on the door of their house. This is passed around by the Israelites, so that if Jen and Kristen, you guys live in the Jewish quarter of Egypt, and Anthony lives in the Egyptian quarter of Egypt, nobody's going to tell him, but we're going to tell you. What you need to do is slaughter a lamb, take blood, put it on the door, and then when the angel of death comes through, he won't kill your firstborn. But since he doesn't know about it, we're going to kill his firstborn. Like it's a sign to God's angel saying, don't kill whoever's in here because we've got the blood up there. It's a protection against death. The blood is a protection against death. Ehrman proposes that that John has Jesus die on the day of preparation because that makes Jesus look like the sheep that is slaughtered to protect from death. So if you look, if you look on page 54, top left of 54, if we concede that the latter account, John's, is on general principle less likely to be accurate, since so many more years or so many more storytellers would have intervened between the account and the events it narrates, he's just saying John seems to be less trustworthy because it's so much later. An intriguing possibility arises to explain why John or his source may have changed the detail concerning Jesus' death. John is the only gospel, he's the only one in which Jesus is actually identified as the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. Indeed, he is called this at the very heart of the gospel. In the fourth gospel, John, Jesus' death represents the salvation of God just as the sacrifice of the Lamb represented salvation for the ancient Israelites during the first Passover. So why would John have Jesus die on the day of preparation? Because it makes Jesus it makes an analogy between Jesus and the lamb. So that lamb that you slaughtered to keep the angel of death from killing your firstborn, Jesus is just like that lamb. And we can draw the parallel by saying he died on the same day that you slaughtered the lamb to protect your doorpost. You had a question?
Yeah, just might be a silly question, but in like the Gospel of Mark, when it talks about that, he had the meal. Isn't that significant? Because like I know in church they say like, take this is my body, and then like with the wine, say like this is my blood. Like, isn't that significant if that never really happened?
Well, that's in. Well, there are multiple things to say. That's in Mark. That's not in John.
That's what I meant in Mark.
John leaves that out. It is there in Mark. For the Catholic Church, they probably, for the most part, see both Mark and John as reliable. Like, the Catholic Church is probably going to say it's all true. Ignore what Ehrman tells you. There are no contradictions. It's all the same. You just have to figure out how it's the same. So the Catholic Church would say, the Catholic Church is not going to doubt the idea that Jesus did that ritual or ordained that ritual at the beginning. I'm not sure if that gets at what you were asking, though.
Well, no, I'm just curious if, like, John is different. They said that he died before he ate the meal. Then that, what they said in Mark, was, like, this is my body. Like, that never happened then.
Well, a good guess is that the community that wrote the Gospel of Mark probably didn't practice that ritual, and it probably wasn't important for them. So why include it in the storyline? Now, again, the reason why he brings this up is that it appears that John may have changed the story because it affected like the message that he wanted to bring, right? Jesus isn't called, or sorry, Jesus isn't, Jesus is not compared to the Passover lamb in Mark. That's not really there. He is in John. Why would John change the day that Jesus died? Because he wants to highlight that feature. So if he did change this, it seems to have been motivated by the story he wanted to tell. Again, like the George Washington, right? It doesn't matter if he really did that or not. What matters is the moral of the story. Presumably the author of the Gospel of John wanted to change it because it was important for the moral of his story. Last thing I wanted to point out. Because there's all these differences, Ehrman suggests that we need to read these texts individually. Right? If Anthony denied that these texts could possibly be different, if Anthony's like, oh, they all have to say exactly the same thing, he might try to reconcile this and say, oh no, it really happened. Like, the Gospel of John's a little bit confusing. What really happened is that he died on Passover, and if he does that, you're going to miss the Gospel of John's point about Jesus being like the Passover lamb, right? If your goal is just to reconcile it with the other books, you're going to miss some of the key features of the books in question. Ehrman says, if you're going to look at the Gospel of John and understand the Gospel of John, don't read it by trying to make it fit with Mark or make it fit with Matthew. Read it by itself and see what it says by itself. So, one thing that he suggests that we can't do is approach the Bible by trying to make it fit with everything else in the Bible, because we're going to get a distorted picture and we're going to miss some of these specific features like the Gospel of John might have wanted to make.